Greetings, everyone. This is Marty's Musing, Dorje and myself, Matan or Mario. How are you guys doing? You can't respond. Dorje, how about you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah. Yeah, just kind of like really enjoying the current astrological craziness that everybody's probably enjoying because we're recording this on a week when Saturn is max combust and then going chasm-y. And then Mercury's going retrograde and a lunar eclipse is occurring, which are all like, just like it's like a blender of a week for like serious astrological energies pushing people around left and right and up and down. And like the Saturn represents sailors and boats, and it's at max combustion, was at max combustion yesterday, and this like US oil tanker gas frigate ship in England got rammed by some other little barge and like blew up. And so you have like this symbology of like the ship in max combustion on the ocean, Pisces, right? And I was like, well, that's just kind of like the energy of the time. It feels like everything's just kind of blowing up, and the ship's like, who knows where it's going? Is it crashing? Is it going to make it through? Is it not? So, kind of like feeling that, like it's just incredible energy out there. How about you? How are you doing?
Wonder if that, you think about the opening of the Bible, right? Where it talks about the waters above. I wonder if it's
Hmm.
been up and all fall and just cause this like Pisces, eclipsing of this holographic or whatever. Just because it's a Piscean ending we're going through, you know,
Yeah, for
moving
sure.
Aries. So this is a huge ending time. So what is it an end of the construct, this kind of re structured reality we live in? I mean, your point picture capture of what the planets are doing with that example is what it is. Like, are the waters draining or are they increasing? Is the
Hmm.
bathtub we're in, is it more water being poured in or is it all being leached out, because it's fire we're approaching. It's Aries.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, that's
And some
ship's
people
on
are talking,
fire.
yeah. On sea, right? So that's fire on Pisces, right? So
Yep.
what's the fire in the middle of the ocean? Then it's like these sporadic fires in on top of water, which will eventually dissolve or catch land. Anyways, I'm obviously I'm doing how everyone else is doing. I mean, huge fluctuations of energy and shifts, and I'm just observing and feeling into where the Aries vortex, is hitting me, which for me is 12th house. So
Hmm.
it's all internalized. And then just feeling also into this eclipse coming up Friday in Virgo, which opposed to the really kind of extreme, intense eclipse at the end of the month. Like this eclipse is more about health and, the day to day and just trudging through and keeping healthy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like all of it is just in this kind of like zone of like, how do you take care of yourself when there's such a maelstrom of emotional energy flying around? Pisces is emotional, It's like well, it's an emotional experience. It's like there's these emotional qualities to the time. And so then, like I'm a Virgo, you're a Virgo. Like we like to stay rational, It's
I know,
it's kind of wet out there. It's kind of wet out there. So
I was gonna say I don't like that, man. I'm not into that. Let that energy flow through. I'm open solar plexus in my human design, you know.
uh-huh.
Let
Yeah.
that energy flow through, I
Yeah, gotta
can't
let
ride
that
that. I
flow
can ride
through.
that wave, but it's not my wave. Just let it flow through. You have the solar plexus though, so when I get on with you, like I'm on your wave. You got
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which is great. It's great. It creates for you know, great energy. So that yeah, I'm doing how it's doing. And today we're gonna get into Venus. We're gonna go over the Venus retrograde. We're gonna talk about that. We got a chart for that. And then I'm gonna
Hmm.
talk a little about the Venus Starpoint. And I'm no expert. I just did a seminar recently with Anastasia, an astrologer from Australia. And
Hmm.
it's really amazing. She studies with a Babylonian astrologer, and she studies Babylonian astrology, where this comes from. So I'll talk a little about that, what little I know, and yeah, that's what we'll do.
Great. Now I'd love to hear about the Venus Starpoint. It's not a strong suit of mine. I know it's like kind of rising in popularity. I think Nick Dagan is like really promoting it. I don't know much about Anastasia, so I'm looking forward to hearing your kind of insights on what it is, how it works, and how we can integrate it into our own kind of like study of ourselves and our charts.
All right, well, that sounds awesome. Okay, so we're gonna start, Dorje, I'm gonna start with not the Venus star point, but the Venus retrograde. So give me a second to pull that up. Did you want to pull up? No, no, I'm pulling up the first chart. You can
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
gonna go through the vernal equinox too before we get to Venus star point. So three charts today. Okay, so let me pull this one up. Okay, so this is for March 1st, which occurred because today we're recording on March 11th. We're a couple of days from this eclipse this Thursday. For you guys in the Pacific or North America, the eclipse will happen at night, I think around 11 to 12:30. And so everyone should be safely protected in their homes. No star watching that night. Stay indoors and avoid the curse of the eclipse. Okay, can you see this?
Yeah, this is you said March 1st.
It's March 1st. So
Okay.
this is when Venus was about, we got 12 noon, Washington, D.C. So this is right about, we got Gemini rising, as in, there's an Iron Maiden song on Seventh Son of the Seventh Son that says Gemini rising in the song. Do you know about this?
No, no, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it's awesome. I don't know in what context. I have to reread the lyrics, but in the middle of the song, they say, Bruce Dickinson says Gemini's rising. So that's really cool. Okay, so Venus is 10 degrees Aries in this chart, and it's about to go retrograde. So Venus has already started joining the fire in the fire sign of Aries, but now it's going to go back to Pisces with that huge gang of planets, right? All
Hmm.
in Cassimi with the sun. Some of them in Cassimi with the sun, but Neptune there, Saturn, Mercury. What does this mean, man? What's happening? Why is Venus taking us back to the past before it goes forward? What's going on?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like Venus, right? Culture, um, the feminine. There's a huge movement now. There's a lot of people who are like, well, the current political climate is kind of like trad wife, it's trying to push the traditional wife kind of like expression into culture again. And it's not going well because women don't like being bound by patriarchal masculine stereotypes or archetypes. Most women don't. I mean, some women embrace it and they feel like that was a better way to be. But most women are like, hey, we like our independence. We like being having agency and independent agency and not being defined by our relationship or by men. And you see that like you got that Venus in Aries, right? I mean, that's independent. That's the independent woman,
Yep.
you know. But there's this kind of like journey. There's this journey back into the previous cycle, the previous epoch, whatever that is. And in some ways, like is that Lady Liberty, holding her torch up? Esther, the star guide, going back. Is this the closing of the borders of America and the creation of the deportation state, sending them back? Bring me your tired, bring me your weary. That's what Lady Liberty says. She's in New York, Staten Island. She's like, America will take all the refugees in. And it's always been a little bit of a kind of like. A trick of labor because you like 150 years ago you bring in the Polish, you bring in the German, you bring in the Irish, and they're getting paid less. But soon they enculturate, and then like, last like 30, 40 years, you're bringing in, the Latin Americans. They're getting paid less, but it, if you're pushing them all out, like, what does that do to the economy? Venus also rules the economy, you know. Venus rules finances. And another thing that you have going on with this is we are entering trade wars, tariffs, the chief, the president, he's like, oh, trade wars, yeah, last time trade wars were big, it was like the 1920s, 19 or late 20s, early 30s, I mean, that wasn't a great time. Some difficult financial things occurred then, and they may occur now. But that Venus retrograde, that's like the going back, uh, you know, before you can bring something new in, the going back. They're visiting some of these like really old ideas. I mean, that's if you ask me what that retrograde motion is, that's what I would say, Mario.
Yeah, no, that's some great hits. I mean, that's what it is. Let me move the flashlight a little and shine it on the more personal aspects in our lives individually.
Hmm.
So wherever we are all at with Aries in our chart. So this is Venus 10 degrees. So it's regressing or retrograding back to the Aries vanishing point that I've been talking about in my videos, and Ray Merriman talks about as well. And what that means is there's this I like the word omega point. I haven't read the trilogy though. I've been wanting to, but almost this point where things are opening up and merging and disappearing and dissolving. It's like this vortex where our lives, there's something new coming in and the old is going out. So Venus is our values. It's the values that get implemented by Jupiter and structured by Saturn. And it's a very slow, gradual process. So Venus is very important in expressing what our internal values are. So whatever the sign of our Venus is, it's a need that we have. And as Dorje noted, this is a collective need for the independence of the feminine that we've had for some time, but for a longer time, we've had a different kind of trajectory of Venus. So this represents here to me this revisiting of this structure of kind of the patriarch energy and the matriarch energy in our lives, in the sense that we're re-looking at something. We're re-looking at our values, and with Mercury joining the retrograde, we're reflecting and reassessing what's working and what's not. And with Venus here, all outer concerns take a break, and because Venus is also so creative, it's also a time to make time for creative pursuits, internal pursuits. So instead of externalizing the social world so much, you're making that time for yourself. So as I see both Mercury and Venus going retrograde together, I mean, Mercury not yet, a couple days, but with Venus retrograde, I feel like, at least for me in my process, it's a very internal process and it's a very creative process where I'm just giving space to my own artistry, my own creativity, because Venus can't express right now externally so well, both as you were saying, for our financial, and so it's not a time to spend money, right? It's a time to like, oh, I'm going to open the space up for me internally. Instead of going out to eat, I'm going to create this, meal for myself. That's a creative venture, right? Instead of paying for some movie to watch online, I'm going to just start writing today. Maybe I'll write a little poetry. Maybe I'll write a short story. You know what I mean? And so it's more of an internalized, I see, an independent in the sense that it's your Venus, it's your creativity. How do you feel about that, Dorje?
Yeah, no, I'm totally within that, and I think that stacks very nicely with, we now have Jupiter running into Saturn, and that's a contraction principle. we have both the retrogrades. That's a contraction principle. So there's a lot of like just this clinging of like contraction. The stock market's contracting, cryptocurrency is contracting, people's economic outlook and views are contracting. And then on an internal personal level, like we should be careful right now. We should be kind of cautious. We should be like, hey, where is all this contraction going? Uh, just take it really easy and go within. It's like, well, we're over the next 3 days. We got this is the 11th of March. We got the Saturn chasm happening, which is like it's this really getting solid into your own stillness and being, and that's like a vital importance right now.
Yeah, yeah, well put. Any final words on that? I'm gonna go ahead into the Venus.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I'm gonna pull up another chart, you guys, for no, actually we'll go into vernal equinox and then we
Mm-hmm.
okay, so let me stop sharing this and share this. Okay, you got the chart for the vernal equinox. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
you
Do
share?
you want me to throw it up?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead and throw it up.
Okay. Bring it over here and then throw on do I have screen share permission to send request? Give me that permission and I'll just toss it right up.
You're in. You're in.
Okay, let's see, share. Here we go. Okay. So here we go. This is the vernal equinox, the Washington DC. Oh no, this is not the vernal equinox. Hold on. And Aries Ingress. There we go. This is the vernal equinox, Washington, D.C., Ingress 2025. And, the sun's moving in. There's some people will say that the Aries Ingress chart is the final degree and final minute before it moves in. It's like right when it's about to punch in. And
Got
the
it.
other one is like right after when it's punching in. I did right after it's punching in. I like that one more. You got Pluto in Aquarius conjunct the ascendant. The ascendant's kind of moving on, but this is kind of like the Aquarian technocratic AI shock doctrine that we've been hit with over the last like 6 weeks. That's a very strong marker in the chart. Then you've got this Saturn in Pisces where it can't find its ground, and then Neptune in the North Node in Pisces in the second house. To me, this is like, hey, okay, there's economic certainty, but there's some kind of vision of where that's going and we might not be able to see it. Maybe it's being hidden from us. But there's some people who know what they're doing and they know where it's going. And I could speculate a lot about that. Like, in terms of macroeconomic cycles, usually it's like every 8 years, 7, 8 years, there's a kind of a recession, and that happens to align with political re-election, presidential re-elections. And I'm almost wondering if there's an intention to shock the economy into a recession now, so the next presidential election, it's not in a recession going into it. I don't know, highly speculative on my part, but there you go. You've got that. Okay, second house, Neptune, North Node, Saturn, dissolution of familiar economic structures. In order for new structures to be born, when are they going to be born? Obviously, when that Neptune and Saturn move into Aries, that's the rebirth. That's coming this year. And then it's I look at this. I look at this third house, and that's the place of friends, as the friends of the nation, neighbors, the neighbors of the nation, and we're in a trade war with Canada and Mexico, like look at that. Aries is war, Aries is Mars. That Mars ruling that third house, that's in Cancer, right? That Cancer resources. War for resources, war for like steel and aluminum resources with our neighbors. I don't know what to say, like
It's all there.
I'm sure this Neptune has a reason it's doing what it's doing, but this is kind of like like a little bit of a dissolutionary thing for the US government and its relationship with its neighbors. But, it's like is it solid? Is it real? I don't know. It's the midheavens in Scorpio. Well, it's happening and and it's fluid, it's like because these are all water signs, and so one week it's tariffs on, next week it's tariffs off, wax on, wax off, tariffs on, tariffs off, tariffs on, tariffs off, that I just don't see how we get out of it this year with this chart, you know. I don't, interestingly enough, Moon in Sagittarius in the 11th house. The Moon is the people. Sagittarius is like philosophy, hope. I do think there's going to be a lot of creative, spiritual, hopeful, responsive joy from the people in countering these, heavy political moves we're facing. You know, I don't think it's going to be all depression. And I think that's indicated in the Aries Ingress chart. I like saying that, I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm pretty depressed. I'm as depressed as any other liberal Democrat out. Not everybody is. I am, you know, but I see this, I'm like, it's not going to be all that bad. There's this kind of like emotional kind of like fire and spirit of like, well, how do we make things better? How can we work with things? This kind of like dialogue, social dialogue going on that is maybe a more positive quality of the Aries return chart. So those are just some of my big hits. I mean, obviously you got Uranus and Taurus down here in the fourth house in the national chart, homeland, Aries Uranus. There's a division. There's this like a polarity of views that's playing out, and you can get in conversations with people about politics these days, but boy, they can get nasty. They can get nasty. Like civil discourse is not like the order of the day here, and I think that's also fully indicated here, especially when you got like Mars, I mean Mercury in Aries and Venus in Aries, running towards that sun. Then there's this like, what is our identity, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to express like you said, Venus values. We're going to express what our values are, and so there, it's just a really kind of like fecund year, but I don't see anything like horrible in this, which really surprises me. Like look at all the trines, look at all the sextiles. When you got the oppositions there, they're all kind of like out of orb, and so I don't see anything horrible here. Whatever. What I see is like we're in a restructuring. Like if you go back and you listen to our 2025 um, uh, three different videos on 2025 because there was so much to cover. Like the restructuring is a big part of what is happening. And nobody likes restructuring because we're all comfortable in our habits, whether they're good habits or bad habits. But this is a year of restructuring. What are your thoughts, Mario?
So let me jump in here. So I think you covered this Aries ingress really well. I don't have too much to add other than my signature on it, which has been seeing it as an Aries vanishing point as sorts. And of course, we have the North Node in Pisces. So with Saturn, Neptune there, with the majority of the planets like around that area, around this Aries vanishing point, as you had noted, there's all these things happening, but you were saying it's and I'll modify your words a little. I don't see it so much as the trines and sextiles preventing well, how can I put it? So we know that in a chart that usually there's a lot of tension and conflicts when we have squares and oppositions, especially with oppositions. That's someone or something getting in your way. And so
Yep.
there's
Yep.
fight, right? Unless you resolve the polarity. With squares, there's an internal tension. So Dorje is right on when he says that things are going to be in flow with that sextile and trine. However, when there's flow, it doesn't mean that it's a safe great, trip down, the slide. The slide could be down straight into hell, and in this case, we have all these AI systems trying to get on board. And
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to be too easy to jump on that. Oh, sure, I'll put some gadgets in my head, like the series, I'm sure you've heard about the series Severance, right? Where they're already putting
Yeah.
the little gadgets in their head and creating their digital self. So it's going to be real easy. And they're setting up, they have it all set up behind the scenes. It's all ready to go. It's just a matter of opening that door, walking in and jumping on that slide. So the ease of which we're transitioning into what they have set up is just, that's kind of scary. I think there's a bifurcation, as we discussed before, on whether people choose to, really choose from their spirit to stay human or to go the transhumanist route. So
Yeah.
see, but what's interesting to me in this chart is just look and you see the foreshadowing there with Uranus. Uranus is going to go into Gemini. So where Jupiter is right now is where Uranus is going to be. And then where Mars is where Jupiter is going to be.
Yep.
Once Jupiter gets into Cancer, it's going to square that Aries vanishing point. So all those planets in Aries, late Pisces, it's going to square all that. And so it's going to be our attention, our reaction, our response to whatever happens right now, both hidden and unhidden. Whatever's occurring this month, like watch, observe closely, because we're not going to see it so clearly unless we're really paying attention to the subtle nuances of what's happening. And our responses to it will be fully expressed in the summer when and starts squaring Saturn and Neptune. And then we'll return to like some kind of mirage and facade of Piscean reality, or safety in the fall. But it's very interesting to me how it's all being set up to just like, yeah, it's just walking in the door to the next room, it feels like. Or like Keats talked about, the poet, where, reality is kind of like you're busy doing something in one room, it's the room of your life, and then all of a sudden you wake up in a different room of the house of your reality.
Yeah, yep, yep. Well, that's like literally the theme of the year is like waking up into a new room, you know. But I do feel like there is this, if you're not going the severance route, and I hope that wasn't a spoiler. I hope you didn't just drop the spoiler of spoilers that they're not actually at Lumen, that the entire thing is in their head being hallucinated by the chip in their head. But I didn't, when you said that, I could see that being the
Wow.
end of the series. So I hope you didn't just like hit that spoiler like
That
hard
would make
there.
sense though, man, because it doesn't make sense in the series how their chip like has some fluctuation sequence, right? And they go into
Yeah.
temporal reality while they're still in their body, right? While they're in that elevator, right? That takes them down.
Yeah. Yep.
It doesn't make sense to me.
So I don't know. I mean, you might have just hit it there, like a big spoiler alert, big spoiler alert. But anyways, like I do really feel strongly like there is this kind of um absolutely ripe potential that artificial general intelligence is in this year or next year. And I just saw this like I read a couple days ago the head of the NSA under Biden came out. He was like, nobody's going to care about Trump in 25 years. He's like, we're going to hit AGI in the next 4 years. And that's going to so cataclysmically shift what it is to be a human and what society is. That like all of this kind of like political stuff isn't going to be the main memory. And I thought about that. I was like, that could be true, you know. It's kind of like it's kind of like we use astrology, we use our own thoughts, we use our own mind to shine a flashlight on a wall, and the wall's huge, and so we're shining in one area, but there's all kinds of stuff that we're not seeing in terms of the potential of how
That's what
things
this
outplay.
vanishing point's about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Something is going to occur in the next 30 days, and we're not going to see it with our physical eyes. And I'll go
yeah.
into this when we get into the Venus Starpoint, because
Whoa,
what
what
we
a great
remember,
transition.
yeah,
Yeah,
what we remember from this time is going to be, like you said, I think you said the key, because what we're going to remember in reflection from this time is going
Hmm.
to be, is not what we're preoccupied with. It's going to be something else. And we're going to look back at it and say, and remember it differently and remember it for different reasons. So it's,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, no, absolutely. And that is, that is stark. That is challenging. Because I think that's part of the emotional unsettledness that everybody's feeling right now. Is this kind of like, I think there's this kind of like communal understanding that we're on the precipice of some major experiential changes. And what we can do in that context is really open up our hearts and souls to a deeper spiritual awakening of what it is to be a human and to relate to each other with love. You
well,
know,
well said.
and
Well,
ideally, in my mind, that is what that Neptune Saturn ingress into the 0 point is it's this opportunity to open the heart towards a greater understanding of what it is to be a human being and to relate to other human beings with love. And, like, I don't know, like, I mean, America is a very heavily armed country. And so I'm sure people are going to get pissed off and pop off. And like, if your greatest protection from that is being in an experience of love so that you're not out there. This is thematic with our other videos, so that you're not out there in the danger zone, so that you're in here in the place of love and spirit and like helping to give that to other people. Because that's what unites us as humans, our commonality of being humans, of waking up, of living a life where we like go through our day and we try to like take care of ourselves and take care of others. And so ideally, like that's what I'd hope to see. And I think that's a principle of Venus, So I'm really curious as to what the Venus star point here. Wow, look at that chart. That's beautiful. What the Venus star point says about giving ourselves to love in the coming year.
um, yeah, thanks for all that. That's brilliant. I just, an image came into my mind of us, pulling the trigger of the gun, and the roses coming out of the gun, the rose
Oh,
bullet.
yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
All right, so you can see it. You guys can all see this. I want to expand it a little.
Yeah. This is March 22nd,
Yeah,
noon.
cool. I was totally confused for a minute and I was seeing both charts. Okay, so on on top of what Dorje just said, being with we're talking about Venus, we're talking about the heart, we're talking about love and care for others and patience, and authentic communication. It is so important this month. The energy is so chaotic. It's so important to be gentle with others.
Mm,
Just accept. I've been getting like this real clear, energetic to be with your own temporal space. In other words,
hmm
don't allow oneself to feel rushed or pushed by anything, but to communicate at your own tempo, your own cadence with everything, including the objects and machines around you and the animals and the flowers and the plants, to be sure to stay with your own pace, because that's you staying with your own frequency, you know?
hmm
And and that's in everything, because the subtle shift of electronic frequencies just curb us just off the frequency of the heart, just off of it, so we can barely recognize that we're not in a frequency of care sometimes, or presence with others. And the,
hmm
the other tip before was like, when you're listening to others, to make sure you're breathing or to hear yourself breathing so you can really be present, that's
Beautiful. Yeah.
so in this chart, this is the Venus sequence chart. I mean, it's not a real Venus sequence chart because there's no Venus sequence star point. So I keep saying sequence, man. So when I say sequence, that's human design. That's a human design concept. Keep sneaking in. What I'm trying to talk about is the Venus star point. So this is from Babylonian astrology. It's not here marked on this chart, so we have to imagine Aries 2 degrees conjunct the sun. Well, we see it right there. Venus is conjunct the sun.
Hmm.
So this is a Venus star point means every 8 years, Venus will make a conjunction with the sun. It makes conjunction with the sun other times too, but it's a specific point in its 546 odd degree journey to create a pentagram through its transits with the sun. And so it's always hitting one point of the pentagram every 8 years. So it'll hit the top, it'll hit, the hips, it'll hit the arms of the pentagram.
Hmm. Yep.
And every 8 years, it'll be a retrograde point or it'll be direct. If it's direct, then it's a Venus star point ruled by Aphrodite. If it's retrograde, then it's a Venus star point ruled by the morning star, and it's ruled by Pallas Athena. So this last cycle that we're ending before March 22nd was an Aphrodite cycle. So this is an 8-year cycle where Venus was perceptible in the sky from time to time in the evening time. And now we're going to make the transition on the 22nd to it being the morning star.
Hmm.
Something we'll be able to see in the north in the morning before sunrise on the day of the 22nd. The night before, it'll be evening star. In the morning, we'll see it a couple hours before sunrise, if I'm correct. We need to double check that for exactly where we are, with depending on where you live. And so that means that the new 8-year cycle of Venus is Pallas Athena. So Aphrodite is more about love and healing, whereas Pallas Athena is more about war and strategy. So we've already had this foreshadowing, an actual engagement of wars happening in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, and it looks like these skirmishes are not over. And so it could be another 8 years as we discussed before in our channel, it could be another 8 years of war and strategy. And it's what it's seeming to be. Like there's, whatever that means for the collective, however it shows up, whether it's Skynet or just machines attacking machines, however, it looks like this particular Venus star point beginning in Aries signifies war. Aries, another significator of war. And,
Hmm.
um, but really the deeper theme is something else, because the deeper theme of the Venus star point in our lives, where it is when we were born, for example, is where it is in our chart, what area of our beingness that we have to give to others. So it's about being aware of what we have to offer for others. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. 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 Mhm. Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm curious as to like why you think it's an 8-year war cycle.
I think just because of it being a morning star Venus. I don't maybe
Hmm.
not necessarily total war, but because Pallas Athena is also about wisdom.
Hmm.
So this is going to be wisdom gained from the hell of what life can be, right? I mean,
Right. Yep.
there's often great beauty in war, great sublimity in the sense that at the point at which we exhaust the horror of life, there's a beauty there sometimes where there's a realization of the essence of what it is to be human because of the hell of what that is, and whether it's through death of others or through the horrors experienced, there sometimes is a beauty that's left over, that's, it's in line with the ideas of Pluto and destruction and destroying all that is inauthentic. If neighbors are pretending to get along, somehow, some way, they at some point they're going to be driven to this point of where they either connect with each other or completely destroy each other, because all
Hmm.
the energy was moving in that direction. We can't underestimate that or pretend that we're separate from these wars outside of us. We all have internal wars occurring within ourselves, as as there's probably a famous quote that says, I know it was in a Carcass song, a death metal song, we all need someone to hate, you know. And then you have the 2 minutes hate in Orwell's 1984, where humans are given this space to hate for 2 minutes a day, right? And it's
Yep.
because it's this space that's needed for humanity to express the emotion of hate or whatever emotion it is. But when we don't have the space to express it, we identify that hate with the reality and say, oh, that's the reality. I hate that because it's horrific. But that's not an essential or a lasting truth, because everything we experience on some level is correct, because this is a transitionary realm that we live in. So there's nothing here to hate ultimately or love ultimately. I mean, ultimately, it's all our experience, and we're experiencing, uh, the extremes, the great heights and the great depths of things, and we associate it, with these identifications of hatred or love, but ultimately, like the experience of life itself is a love affair, is love,
Beautiful. Yeah.
is it. I just ended on a tautology. Um,
No, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, I mean, to me, it's really interesting because like one of the big themes of the Venus cycle is the myth of Inanna. And Inanna is like beautiful, like she's just a beautiful, gorgeous goddess, and then she's compelled to go into the underworld, why is she compelled to go into the underworld? I mean, she's seeking the power of life over death, or it's out of duty to like because her husband died, and she wants to go and be with him, and she goes into the underworld, and as she goes, she loses like her crown and her earrings and her necklace and her girdle and her rings and her rod and her robe. She all of these things, which in one way it's like kind of like the dimming of Venus as it goes retrograde and then goes into the combust into the sun and becomes invisible. You know. And then when she's down there, like the queen of the dead, like is like, you are just arrogant and prideful, and like rips her open and hangs her on a meat hook.
right.
And there is this quality in that of like getting down into our deep essential self. Who are we without any ornaments? The ornaments of our personality that we wear. And I feel like that's a part of the initiatory cycle that we go through when Venus is retrograde and it conjuncts the sun. And it's matching right now. It's matching over the next 3 weeks with these eclipses, with the Mercury retrograde, with the Saturn chasm in the next few days, and it's all just stripping down into who are we without the structures of our identities and our support and our society, and like what are we when everything else doesn't make sense, and the only sense we can find is our own souls, you know. And then you find that place. You find that place ideally during this journey. Ideally, the people you're going to find that place on the 22nd of March. You're going to be there on the meat hook, completely flayed open. And then from that, then you get to reformulate, you get to reconstruct, you come back together, and you're reborn as the morning star. You're reborn as the brightness of being. And we have to go through these processes of death and regeneration and rebirth that are symbolized in every facet of astrology, which is part of why astrology is a universal mystery tradition, because every facet of it is speaking to the cycles of death and rebirth. And so then we'll be reborn out of this into the new way of being, but we're going to spend some time in the underworld first. Um, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of like the internal journey I think that we take. Really interesting that you're like, well, this marks an 8-year cycle of war. Like it's kind of a little bit hard to like grasp around that. The last time Venus was retrograde in Aries, it was what, 2008, 2009, and I think that was the beginning of, like the end of the Iraq War was right around then. But it was like really when the Afghanistan war kind of like pitched in at a high place. And maybe that's because the people who make weapons just always need some kind of war going on in order to profit. The people who are the purveyors of Moloch and pitch children into fires in order to gin up their ability to have feast at the cost of humanity always need that war going. And so yeah, where is that war? Where's it going to be? That's a hard question. Is that? I hope not. I hope we're coming to an end of that, but it seems like it's just a companion, a constant companion to being a human.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wars within, if there's wars within, there's wars without. Who are we to pretend that, the we can't point
True.
outside,
Yeah.
otherwise we're being hypocritical if there's wars going on within us. And a lot of us have Aries, Aries in our chart, so we know what it is
Yeah. Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
in a
we
war,
do.
and often with ourselves, so. But thank you, that was brilliant, man. I totally forgot to bring up the underworld visitation of Venus and Inanna, of course. That's the main myth associated with this Babylonian Venus Starpoint. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thanks everyone. Nothing more to add. Hope you guys
Well,
enjoy.
thank you.
Like and subscribe and connect to Dorje's website at heartastrology.com and mine plutonicplanes.com. And if you want to get readings from us, we're here to do it. And the best to all of you during this time period.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. See you, everybody.
See
Bye.
you.